Hey all, it's Starzy, and today I am going to be going through my comic book and graphic novel collection. So something you're not going to be seeing at all today are any of my single issue comics, because there are a lot of them, especially now that I have my dad's collection, who was reading and collecting, since he was a kid until he died. So I have a lot, and a lot still packed away. So I've decided not to go near them, especially since the reason I'm doing this in the first place is because I wanted to do something kind of just low-key and chill, since I'm so late filming this week as it is. So no single issue comics. I'm going through my graphic novels and my trades, basically. I'm also not going to be going through anything that's like comic book related. Like, I have a big DC encyclopedia and a bunch of other little bits and pieces like that, and I haven't bothered to get any of that out either. It's just like the bound up comics themselves. Also not going to be any manga because I don't own any, other than the only manga in my house at the moment is Sailor Moon, and even that does not belong to me. It is actually my little siblings that I bought them as a gift one year and then borrowed to read myself, and still have not done so. So Willow, if you're seeing this, no you're not. Why? Cat, why are you cleaning yourself in the background? Is this really the time? Yes, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through them much like I did for my Mythology and Folklore collection. That's the general vibes we're going with. Alright, might as well get the biggest two things out the way first. I have Saga. This is, I don't know which issues this actually contains. This is a big bind-up. Saga Book 1, a big bind-up of a bunch of Saga, which is a sci-fi graphic novel series, and it is one of my favorites. I have mentioned before that I used to have a subscription to it so that I was reading it as soon as they came out digitally, but I'm not up to date currently. But I do love Saga. It's got there's just so much going on in Saga. Like, you've got your family, your violence, love, betrayal, and lots of cute characters. And also Saga is just one of my favorites in terms of like the art in it too. Like, it's beautiful. Son, why have you forsaken me as soon as I started filming? The other really big, heavy bind-up I have is of Buffy. So Buffy season 8. Again, I don't know which issues this contains, but it's season 8, volume 1. Is Buffy the Vampire Slayer is my favorite TV show, and whoa, what's the picture underneath? I don't remember. Oh, Buffy. So then, after the show finished airing on television, it did continue in comic book form, and I don't love the comics, and I haven't read a lot of them outside of this bind-up, but it is still really interesting to see what they've done with these characters and where they've been imagined to be from the ending of the show, although there is some really weird stuff as well that makes me a little uncomfortable, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I visited these. Yeah, Buffy. The Avengers. So The Avengers is the comic book series that I read a lot of as a child. It was the comic book series that I really got into when I was young, and this actually, I don't know what this just says, The Avengers, but I think I feel like this might have been a book that came in one of those like subscriptions. If you've ever gotten those like the books and stuff that you can pick up from the newsagents that are also things you can subscribe to, or they come out weekly, fortnightly, monthly at the newsagent. I think this might have been one of those kind of things. So I got it, not as a child. I remember I got this as an adult, but yeah, it just seems to have a bunch of random Avengers comics in it. And Wanda was always my favorite in the comics, and what they did to the Maximoff siblings in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not okay. Again, in the similar vein to that, these were definitely one of those subscription type things, which I always considered actually getting the subscription, but I never ended up doing it. I just got a bunch of them at the newsagents as I saw them, and they were Judge Dredd, which I actually didn't expect to like Judge Dredd. Like, it's kind of such a gritty and macho comic in a lot of ways, in this kind of dystopian type society. But for some reason I did really enjoy them, and also because these are bind-ups of a bunch of Judge Dredd comics like throughout the years, it's also really interesting that there are lots of different art styles within these. So I have, what's this one? Origins, Mechanismo, and America. And see, like, if I'd gotten all of them, they make a picture, but I did not. But I did find these really interesting, and I also, they're just really, there's something about them that's just really aesthetically pleasing with like the simplistic colour palette. I don't know. Alright, so Spike, After the Fall. I am pretty sure this is one that someone gave me as a birthday present. Maybe my like 18th? Because, you know, I was obsessed with Spike as a teenager. And so yeah, this is a comic featuring a character from Buffy. I think this also had Illyria in it, so from, you've watched Angel, and I feel like it was in like a different world, so it was kind of like, it had a really true fantasy feel. It's been many years since I've visited this, but I remember enjoying it when I read it, and the cover is real pretty. And then this one is Spike Into the Light, which I can't remember which one this is, because I remember there are 3 Spike comics here, because there's also this one, Spike, A Dark Place, and between these two I can't remember which was which or what, or basically I can't remember anything to do with them. I just remember that one of the Spike comics I read I really didn't think was good, but like I just appreciated for the fact it was Spike. And yeah, I remember nothing about these, absolutely nothing, but Spike. I also have The Long Way Home, which is volume 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 8, so I think I must have gotten this before I got the huge bind up. The art, like the covers on these are really pretty too. Before we really get into like DC and Marvel, I think we'll go through the things that are not either of those. Because I know that the big properties that they are can be very intimidating to people, and not everyone likes them. Oh, I actually have these. So these are, what is this? Star Wars by Jeffrey Brown. These are little like comic books that are just like adorable. Vader and Friends. Yeah, this is the comic one. Darth Vader and Friends. It's just like little Star Wars related comics where like they're all children. It's just really cute. And I like Star Wars. I finally watched the most recent Star Wars and I don't know how I feel about it. Which is a thing. Now it's raining. Of course. Like, decent lighting for hours. As soon as I start filming, it gets dark and starts raining. The Wicked and the Divine, the 4th act. So volume 1 of The Wicked and the Divine is a graphic novel series that revolves around reincarnated gods, essentially. Once they realize that they are these gods, they basically have a clock ticking on them until they die. And the art in this, very, very pretty. But I thought, I felt like story-wise it was just kind of okay. Like, interesting concept, beautiful art, kind of just okay in the execution. But I'm still, I'm not sure. I haven't decided whether I'm going to continue reading it yet, but beautiful. Oh, I have a volume of Saga here. Is this volume 6? Why I have volume 6 as a bind-up, I have no idea. Fables. I have the first 2 volumes of Fables. This one still has the plastic wrap on it. I've actually just read the first one before, so I've talked about that recently in my, what month are we in? September, so I talked about it in my August wrap-up. Fairy tales in our modern world, they're kind of trapped here because they can't go back home, and so it's a very kind of gritty look at retellings. It's kind of a gritty look at fairy tales, and it's got a murder mystery in it, this first volume, and I did really enjoy it. I have the first 3 volumes of Monstrous, which is a graphic novel series that I have seen categorized as both fantasy and horror, but at the very least it is a really dark fantasy series, because you've got some kind of monstrous darkness inside our main character. You've got bloody, weird stuff happening. And there's a lot to wrap your head around and a lot to try and work out with this series, which I know some people have a problem with, but I love this. And again, like, the art is stunning. That doesn't really show you how beautiful the art is because it's just the animals, but they're beautiful. Like, they are so beautiful, and I really like my dark, weird stuff, we all know. And I'm currently reading this, volume 3, so that's why there's a bookmark in it. Into, I think everything that's left is DC and Marvel. So my favorite character, not just comic book character, but like my favorite character in general, and has been my absolute favorite since I was about 14, 15 maybe, Harley Quinn. So this is Harley Quinn, celebration of 25 years. So it's a big bind up of a bunch of Harley Quinn comics throughout the years. And the thing is, I bought this because of course I did, because I buy things just because Harley Quinn's on them, but because I own and have read so much Harley Quinn, I'd already read everything that's in this, but I, you know, still appreciate having it because look at my girl. I have Spider-Gwen, the first volume, which I read this years ago now, I feel, and I did actually enjoy it, so I do want to continue this series. We're in an alternate reality where Spider-Man doesn't exist. Gwen Stacy kind of takes that mantle instead, and so I did really enjoy this and want to read more, and I don't know what more there is to say about that. Batman Hush. This is obviously a Batman graphic novel, a very famous one. My initial introduction to Hush was actually through action figures because my dad had the Huntress Hush action figure, which was beautiful. I've always liked Huntress ever since Justice League Unlimited, but do I actually remember much about the story of this? No, but Harley Quinn's on the cover. I remember something I really enjoyed about this that I do remember is how many different characters popped up throughout. It was really interesting to see. These three were my dad's. They're all Batman. So we've got The Killing Joke, obviously very famous graphic novel that a lot of people rightfully do not like because of the things that happen in it, but it is a thing that is now on my shelves. We hate the Joker here. Interesting as a villain, but we hate the Joker here. Batman Year One. Do I remember what this is? Not really. I have read all these before, like these ones that were my dad's, I know I read like when I was quite young. Some when I was younger than I should have read them. Batman The Dark Knight Returns is another one. Batman. So Avengers were my favorite comics, but Avengers and Batman are my favorite, and not like MCU Avengers, like the original Avengers. And the thing is, it's not even necessarily Batman himself, it's that, like, the Gotham Rogues Gallery, like, Batman has the greatest, Batman has just, like, the best villains, basically. Obviously, yeah, Harley's my favorite, but there are so many good villains. And also just, like, the Bat family in general. Like, it can be really hard to get into Batman because of how much history it has and how, like, Marvel and DC comics can be very difficult to get into because they often are pulling from existing lore and comics without really, they don't really hold your hand through it usually, but I do like Batman. Kind of along that kind of in that vein is Gotham Academy, which is obviously set in Gotham, where Batman is, but we're in a school and we're following some kids who go to this school, and this had a bit of a mystery. This had a bit of a spooky mystery to it, and I did really enjoy this and do want to continue. And the art, again, this is one of the ones where the art was just... Harley Quinn, Preludes and Knock Knock Jokes. Harley Quinn. I have, whenever I'm in a comic book store and I've decided I'm going to buy something, I usually go for something that has Harley Quinn on the cover. That's just a fact of life that we need to accept. It's Harley Quinn, Volume 1, Hot in the City. So this was the New 52 Harley Quinn, which actually a lot of fun. And also, like, when we're looking at like Birds of Prey, there are so many things from these comics that there were nods to in that movie, which was also great. It says Harley Quinn Volume 2, so Volume 2 from that run. Some Gotham City Sirens comics, so what's this, Song of the Sirens and Gotham City Sirens Union? I don't know. I actually really love the Gotham City Sirens comics, and to be completely honest, the reason that is because of the interactions with Harley and Ivy. Like, I don't know that it was actually canon at this point. Like, I don't know whether Ivy and Harley were canon at this point. I don't think they were, but the way they were written in these comics, like, they were canon without being canon. Like, it was so, like, on the nose, but I really loved seeing all of their interactions. So, soft spot for these comics. Alright, I have Suicide Squad Volume 1 and 2, again from the New 52. Obviously, initially intrigued because of Harley Quinn. I don't really like these comics though, and I can't even tell you, like, why. Like, they're just like, eh. That's just how I felt reading them. I don't know. I didn't love the comics, and I also didn't love the movie for completely different reasons. Huntress, Power Girl, World's Finest, another New 52 comic. I don't really remember much about this, but again, Huntress is a character I was initially intrigued by because I watched, like, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited growing up, and I loved those shows, and Huntress and Black Canary were my favorite after watching Justice League Unlimited. So, like, I picked this up. I don't remember anything about it. Apparently there's Batman and Superman in it. I don't know. When you consume too much comic book media, especially with how kind of convoluted and intertwined everything is, it can be very hard to, like, keep things straight in your head of, like, what's what. Then DC versus Marvel Comics. Is that all what it's called? I'm pretty sure it had another name. It was like Amalgam or something. No? Okay, just DC versus Marvel Comics. So this is, I don't know whether it's necessarily the best. Don't you dare knock my camera, especially now I have light. Watching you, cat. I don't know whether this is, like, necessarily the best thing story-wise, but I love this. I initially read it as a kid, and I love it because, do not knock it, because not only is it obviously DC and Marvel coming together, but the thing of this story is that something happens that basically means the two universes are meshed together. And what happens in this is that characters become meshed together. So you have all of these superheroes in here that are DC and Marvel characters put together, and it's just so interesting to see how that's been done, and see who's been put together and all of their different designs. Like, let's find one. Amalgam, any combination or mixture of diverse elements. So I think, like, here, this is like Wolverine and Batman, and so you've got all these really interesting designs, and my favorite, who I didn't see her just then, but my favorite was, I think she's called the White Witch. Maybe the fact she was my favorite, considering her design in this, should have been an earlier indication that I wasn't straight. But the White Witch is a combination of, like, Zatanna and the Scarlet Witch. It was really interesting for that fact, even though, like, I can't remember exactly what was happening. Yeah, something happened that made them mush together, and, like, something had to be done to set things right, and I don't know, but, like, seeing all the combinations of characters was just really cool, and so I really like this for that fact. This was my favorite character. Reading this at, like, 12 at the oldest, and, yes. Starzy, please. So again, I have lots of single issues, but I think the last bind-ups I have, some of these are from my childhood. So as I mentioned, the thing I read the most as a kid was the Avengers. They've even got, like, the freaking yellowed pages. I remember my dad and I went to Minotaur in the city and got these at different times. So this is volumes 2 and 3. I think we got volumes 2 and 3 because basically everything that was in volume 1 Dad had in single issues because he'd read them as a kid. But yeah, these are just big bind-ups of like the original Avengers comics, which started in what, like this is Avengers issues 25 to 46. Copyright 1966. So there we go. Comics from the 60s. Yeah. This was where my love of comics truly started. Well, although actually, no. Yes and no, because the other thing that made me love comics wasn't actually like comic books themselves, it was comic book media. Like, I grew up watching a bunch of comic book shows, like the friggin' 80s X-Men TV show, and also the 90s Batman, the animated Batman show, which, you know, is also where Harley's origin is. So yeah, and then later Justice League Unlimited, Teen Titans, X-Men Evolution. Like, honestly, like comic book TV shows. There's also like the 90s Batman movies. But anyway, we're not here to get into all of the comic book media I consumed and loved that wasn't actually comic books. And then the last thing I have is one that I bought. I think I bought this as an adult, and this is volume 1 of one of those bind-ups. Not much to say about these. I mean, most people have at least some idea of the Avengers thanks to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as much as things may be different from there, but yeah. They are all my graphic novels and comic book trades and bind-ups. Honestly, there might also be, it is possible that there are other bind-ups amongst the comics in the garage and not just single issues. But for the most part, that's what I have. There is also a bunch of comics I've read digitally, but let's not go into that. I haven't read any, like I've read a few graphic novels this year, but I haven't read any, like, you know, getting back to the basics of comic books like DC and Marvel in so long. I feel I really need to. But if you've gotten this far, let me know what your favorite comic book or graphic novel is. Did you read comics as a kid? Who are your favorite comic book characters? It's something I need to get back into because it was such a big part of my childhood and then into my teens with my Harley Quinn love. So yeah, let's talk comic books and graphic novels in the comments. Anywho, I'm just gonna be here crying over the fact I lost my lighting, and stay safe. Starzy out.